Hi everyone and happy World Wildlife Day. So I'm Liv and I'm here with some of the Tusk team and another Generation Tusk Committee member, Frankie, to speak to Lawrence Zikusoka, who is co-founder of Conservation Through Public Health, which is an organization supported by Tusk and based in Uganda that focuses on the interdependence of wildlife and human health in and around Africa's protected areas. So the theme of this year's World Wildlife Day is Forests and Livelihoods, Sustaining People and Planet. And as we will hear, this is central to the work of Conservation Through Public Health in their aim to both support and empower local people living next to important gorilla habitats, and also to conserve and protect this amazing species and the habitat that they live in. So today also marks the end of our coffee and conservation campaign. And so we're also going to learn a little bit about Guerrilla Conservation Coffee, which is a social enterprise run by Conservation Through Public Health that supports smallholder farmers around Bwindi National Park in Uganda. So thank you so much for joining us today, Lawrence. So as we know, it's taken the global COVID-19 pandemic to raise awareness of the need to prevent zoonotic disease. And this is something that Conservation Through Public Health has been working towards for many years now. So can you explain a little bit about how the organization started and a little bit about what you do?
Yes, thank you very much, team, for inviting us to speak today. It's a great honor. And so really, when we look at Conservation Through Public Health, it's a long story. It started as a journey for our founder and CEO, Dr. Gladys Zikusoka. She, at the time, was Uganda's first wildlife veterinarian and set up the vet unit in Uganda. And about 1996, there was a first scabies disease outbreak in mountain gorillas. And this was traced back to people living around the gorilla habitat at Bwindi, Impenetrable National Park, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And we suspect that the gorillas came into contact with people's clothing, and this is how the scabies came about. Fast forward then, there was actually, well, when this scabies outbreak occurred in 1996, it actually resulted in the death of an infant. And so fast forward to 2001, 2002, there was another scabies outbreak, but fortunately, thank goodness, no gorillas died, and they were treated quite rapidly. And so Dr. Gladys and team from the Uganda Wildlife Authority were always concerned about zoonosis, which is diseases that can spread from people to animals and animals to people. And that's what led us to create Conservation Through Public Health, which was started in 2003. Registered both in Uganda and in the United States. And we've fast grown to become an organization that's recognized for our efforts in One Health. And I'll go into a little bit more about that. And that's kind of how it all started. So we're looking at disease transfer from people to animals and animals to people, which of course is quite pertinent when we look at what's going on today with the current pandemic situation globally. And I'll talk a little bit more about that.
So yeah, so as you said, we know that gorillas are particularly vulnerable to human-animal disease transmission, which includes COVID-19. But we also know that gorilla conservation relies heavily on tourism. So how do you think the pandemic has affected your organization? And how do you think it will affect gorilla conservation and tourism in the future?
Exactly. More to the point, it's actually affected communities on the ground. As you know, during the lockdown phase, people were not able to travel into Uganda. In fact, Uganda opened her airports towards the end of last year, 2020. So normally speaking, community would rely heavily on visitors coming in. Visitors contribute significantly to the economy, especially the tourism industry. And so when vulnerable communities were not being able to rely on income from visitors, this creates quite a lot of need for basic support, and we found that this led actually to some poaching activities that took place. In fact, we lost Rafiki. Rafiki was the lead silverback of the Impenetrable Guerrilla group, and we suspect that a poacher was looking for other items, but came across Rafiki and speared him. And so the lack of tourism activities has created a kind of economic gap, and people are quite concerned about that. Yes, I can say to a little extent, travelers are coming back now to Uganda, and we believe that in future, new measures have been put in place. For example, CTPH has been involved in training rangers, training guides. We have our whole Guerrilla Guardians plus the village health and conservation teams that go out in the field. And even now the guerrilla trekking rules and regulations have been improved, whereby previously one could visit the gorillas at 7 meters. Now it's increased to 10 meters. One must wear the proper masks, the N95s, and sanitizers are in effect. It's going to be a slow road, and while there's not possibilities or while there are limited opportunities, we were looking at addressing some of these economic gaps and environmental gaps, because life must go on.
So thank you, Lawrence, for that. And leading on from talking about that topic, the pandemic has obviously shown us how important it is for conservation to diversify and look beyond tourism. And an amazing example of this is your Guerrilla Conservation Coffee, which is one of our prizes for our giveaway. Can you tell us a little bit more about this and how it came about?
Absolutely. Again, Dr. Gladys, our founder and CEO, met with farmers around Bwindi, and they actually explained to them some of the project ideas or opportunities that they saw themselves. So it wasn't so much that CTPH was insisting upon coffee as an alternative livelihood. They were actually farmers, smallholder farmers around Bwindi. They've been there for a very, very long time. And traditionally, they were not getting a steady market and a fair price. So we decided to, CTPH that is, register Guerrilla Conservation Coffee, founded in 2015, as a social enterprise that ensures the protection of endangered mountain gorillas at Bwindi while creating a global coffee brand. And so this product here has a triple bottom line, and I'll talk about where it's available in England. But first of all, what we are doing is paying the farmers above the market price for single origin Arabica coffee. And a donation from every bag sold goes towards supporting the work of conservation through public health, be it through our programs on wildlife health monitoring and conservation, human public health, and alternative livelihoods. And this is still quite a new innovation. And we're happy to say that we want to thank Tusk for enabling us to have it on the Tusk website through our first UK distribution partner called moneylobeans.com. They're located in Maidenhead. So people in the United Kingdom will be able to support conservation through public health. The farmers around Bwindi who are working on saving gorillas one sip at a time, which is our tagline. The coffee is also available in other countries, including Australia and New Zealand. More recently in Kenya at Carrefour, through a partnership with Safari Lounge. And on our website, gccoffee.org, you can find a whole bunch of outfits globally, as well as in Uganda. I also want to thank Tusk tremendously, as Dr. Gladys, again, was a finalist in the Tusk Conservation Award for Africa in 2019 when we had a chance to meet Mary Jane. And that was a great opportunity and an honor. Thank you, Mary Jane, for that.
Great, thank you so much. And we'll be sure to provide some links on this post so that everyone can go and check out the coffee if they want to indeed try some for themselves.
I did want to touch a little bit more on your other question about the pandemic, and also more to the point of what actually are we doing during this new situation. So obviously increasing urgency to act now during C19. And we've identified a couple of areas that we're focusing on right now. So one of them is the provision of ready-to-grow gardens for vulnerable households. These are households around Bwindi who, again, for a cost of growing a garden at $12, are able to do quite a lot in terms of providing nutritional value and food to people. The other thing that we're working on currently is the training of the Guerrilla Guardians. And these are people that are traditionally maybe health workers or conservation workers. And they're doing a lot to support the mitigation of C19 and measures that are on the ground. Thirdly, conservation through public health are engaging members, which are village health and conservation teams. And these provide health and conservation information and services to households. Fourthly, we are engaging community members in alternative livelihoods, and that's specifically where guerrilla conservation comes into play. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you.
Welcome.
I'll hand back over to Liv if you want to wrap up, if you've got any final words for us.
No, well, just to say thank you so much to Lawrence. It's really interesting to hear about all the different things you're doing and planning, you know, that are thinking, as we've discussed, beyond tourism to help the communities, which, as we've heard, helps in turn the gorillas and their habitat. So it sounds like a fantastic approach. And I know on behalf of Generation Tusk, and I'm sure Tusk as well, we're going to have an amazing continued collaboration in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you too, team. And my very best to Charlie, Dan, Sarah, and Ivy. Thank you all for your great support. And it's been a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.